The morning sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone courtyard of Valenhall Palace, where Princess Alara walked gracefully toward the royal gardens. Her emerald silk dress rustled softly with each step, and her auburn hair caught the golden light filtering through the ancient oak trees that lined the pathway. The 24-year-old princess had always found solace in these early morning walks, away from the constant attention of court officials and the endless stream of royal duties that consumed her days. As she approached the rose garden, something unusual caught her eye. Standing near the ornate fountain at the center of the garden was a figure she had never seen before. The person appeared to be a young man, perhaps around her own age, dressed in simple but well-tailored dark clothing that seemed neither royal nor common. His black hair was slightly tousled by the morning breeze, and he stood with an air of quiet confidence that immediately intrigued her. Princess Alara paused behind a marble column, observing the stranger with curiosity. In all her years living in the palace, she had never encountered someone who could move so freely through the secured grounds without her knowledge. The royal gardens were strictly private, accessible only to family members and a select few trusted servants. Yet here was this mysterious figure, standing as if he belonged there, completely at ease in surroundings that should have been forbidden to him. The man seemed to sense her presence, turning slowly in her direction. When their eyes met across the garden, Alara felt a strange jolt of recognition, though she was certain they had never met. His eyes were an unusual shade of gray-blue, like storm clouds over the ocean, and they held a depth of intelligence that seemed far beyond his apparent years. He offered her a gentle smile, neither presumptuous nor apologetic, but simply acknowledging her presence with quiet respect. For a moment, neither of them moved. The princess found herself captivated by this unexpected encounter, her usual caution temporarily forgotten in the face of such an intriguing mystery. Who was this person? How had he gained access to the most secure areas of the palace? And why did his presence feel somehow familiar, despite the certainty that they were strangers? The spell was broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Captain Marcus Thornfield, the head of the royal guard, appeared at the garden entrance with two of his men. His weathered face bore an expression of concern as his eyes swept the area, clearly conducting a routine security check. The captain had served the royal family for over 2 decades, and his dedication to their safety was unwavering. Princess Alara quickly stepped out from behind the column, not wanting to appear as though she had been hiding. As she did so, she glanced back toward the fountain, expecting to see the mysterious stranger still standing there. To her surprise, the area was completely empty. The man had vanished as silently and inexplicably as he had appeared, leaving no trace of his presence except for the lingering questions in her mind. Captain Thornfield approached her with a respectful bow. His sharp eyes scanned the garden once more before focusing on her face. "Your Highness, I hope you are well this morning. We received a report of an unknown individual in this area. Have you seen anyone who doesn't belong here?" The princess hesitated for a moment, torn between honesty and an inexplicable desire to protect the stranger's secret. Something about the encounter had felt significant, though she couldn't explain why. After a brief internal struggle, she decided on a measured response. "I thought I saw someone near the fountain, Captain Thornfield, but they're no longer here. Perhaps it was just a trick of the morning light through the trees." The captain's experienced eyes studied her face carefully, noting the slight flush in her cheeks and the unusual brightness in her eyes. He had known Princess Alara since she was a child, and he could sense that something had affected her more than she was willing to admit. "I see, Your Highness. We'll conduct a thorough search of the grounds to ensure everything is secure. In the meantime, might I suggest that you return to the palace? Your breakfast appointment with the Queen is scheduled to begin shortly." Princess Alara nodded, though her mind remained fixed on the mysterious encounter. As she walked back toward the palace with Captain Thornfield and his guards flanking her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this morning had marked the beginning of something significant. The stranger's image remained vivid in her memory. His calm demeanor, those penetrating eyes, and most puzzling of all, the strange sense of recognition she had felt. Inside the palace, the familiar routine of royal life resumed. Servants bustled through the corridors, preparing for the day's activities. The Queen, a dignified woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind but perceptive eyes, was already seated in the private dining room when Alara arrived for breakfast. "Good morning, my dear," Queen Isabella said, gesturing for her daughter to take the seat across from her. "You look rather thoughtful this morning. Did you enjoy your walk in the gardens?" Princess Ilara took her seat carefully, trying to compose her features into their usual serene expression. Her mother had an uncanny ability to read her emotions, a skill developed over years of navigating both royal politics and motherhood. "Yes, Mother. The gardens are lovely this time of year. The roses are in full bloom." The Queen studied her daughter's face over her teacup, noting the subtle signs of preoccupation. "Indeed they are. Captain Thornfield mentioned there might have been a security concern in that area this morning. I trust you encountered nothing troubling?" The princess met her mother's gaze steadily, choosing her words carefully. "Nothing troubling, no. Captain Thornfield was simply being thorough in his duties, as always." Queen Isabella nodded, though her maternal instincts told her there was more to the story. She had learned over the years when to press for details and when to allow her daughter the space to share information in her own time. This seemed like a moment for patience. As they continued their breakfast, discussing the day's schedule and various court matters, Princess Ilara's mind kept drifting back to the garden encounter. She found herself analyzing every detail of the stranger's appearance and behavior, searching for clues to his identity and purpose. Meanwhile, in the security office of the palace, Captain Thornfield was reviewing the morning's incident reports with his lieutenant, James Whitmore. The younger man, ambitious and thorough in his duties, spread several documents across the captain's desk. "Sir, we've completed our search of the gardens and surrounding areas. No signs of unauthorized entry were found. All gate logs show normal activity, and the guard rotations were completed without incident." Captain Thornfield frowned, tapping his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. "Yet Princess Ilara clearly saw someone. Her Highness is not given to flights of fancy, Lieutenant. If she says there was a person in the garden, then there was. Perhaps it was someone with legitimate access, sir? A gardener or maintenance worker who simply finished their duties and left before we arrived? All garden staff are accounted for, and their work schedules don't include the fountain area until later in the week." The captain stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the grounds he had protected for so many years. "No, this is something else entirely. Double the patrols around the royal quarters and have the gate guards review their entry logs again. I want to know how someone gained access to those gardens without our knowledge." As the morning progressed, news of the mysterious sighting began to circulate among the palace staff, though in hushed tones and careful whispers. Servants who had worked in the royal household for decades exchanged knowing glances, remembering other times when unexplained events had preceded significant changes in the kingdom. In the royal library, Princess Ilara tried to focus on her daily studies, but found her attention wandering constantly. The large, leather-bound books that usually captured her interest seemed dull and lifeless compared to the vivid memory of her encounter with the stranger. She had always been an avid reader, finding escape and knowledge in the vast collection of volumes that filled the library's towering shelves. But today, even her favorite philosophy texts failed to hold her attention. Lord Edmund Blackwood, her longtime tutor and advisor, noticed her distraction immediately. The elderly scholar had been educating members of the royal family for over 30 years, and he possessed an almost supernatural ability to detect when his students' minds were elsewhere. "Your Highness," he said gently, closing the book they had been reviewing together, "perhaps we should postpone today's lesson. You seem to have other matters occupying your thoughts." Princess Alara looked up, startled from her reverie. "I apologize, Lord Blackwood. I'm afraid I haven't been the most attentive student this morning." The older man smiled kindly, his weathered face creasing into familiar lines of understanding. "We all have days when our minds wander, my dear. Is there something particular troubling you? Sometimes discussing our concerns can help clarify our thoughts." For a moment, the princess considered confiding in her trusted tutor. Lord Blackwood had always been more than just an educator to her. He had been a confidant and wise counselor throughout her youth. Yet something held her back from sharing the details of her morning encounter. The mysterious stranger had sparked a curiosity in her that felt intensely personal, and she wasn't ready to subject it to analysis or explanation. "Nothing troubling exactly," she replied carefully. "I suppose I'm simply feeling restless today. Perhaps some fresh air would help clear my mind." Lord Blackwood nodded understandingly. "An excellent idea. The pursuit of knowledge should never feel forced or burdensome. Take the afternoon for yourself, and we'll resume our studies tomorrow when you feel more focused." As Princess Alara left the library, she decided to return to the gardens. Something drew her back to that space, a compulsion she couldn't fully explain. Perhaps the stranger would appear again, or perhaps she would find some clue to his identity that had been overlooked during the morning's search. The afternoon sun had transformed the garden into a different place entirely. Where the morning light had created long shadows and mysterious corners, the bright daylight revealed every detail with crystal clarity. The fountains sparkled in the sunshine, and the roses filled the air with their sweet fragrance. Yet despite the garden's beauty, it felt somehow empty and ordinary compared to the charged atmosphere of her earlier visit. Princess Alara walked slowly around the fountain, examining the ground for any sign that might explain the stranger's presence or sudden disappearance. The gravel paths showed no unusual footprints, and the carefully maintained flower beds bore no evidence of disturbance. It was as if the mysterious figure had materialized from thin air and then vanished just as impossibly. As she stood in the exact spot where she had first seen him, the princess tried to recapture the feeling of that moment. There had been something almost magical about the encounter, a sense of possibility and mystery that had awakened something within her. Her life, while privileged and meaningful, had often felt constrained by duty and protocol. The appearance of this unknown person had introduced an element of unpredictability that both thrilled and unsettled her. Lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice the approach of Lady Catherine Fairmont, her closest friend and lady-in-waiting. The young woman had served in this capacity for several years, and their relationship had evolved from formal service into genuine friendship. "Alara, there you are," Lady Catherine said softly, not wanting to startle her friend. "Your mother has been looking for you. The diplomatic reception has been moved to an earlier time, and you need to prepare." Princess Alara turned, grateful for her friend's gentle interruption of her increasingly circular thoughts. "Thank you, Catherine. I was just thinking." Lady Catherine studied her friend's face with concern. She had known Alara long enough to recognize the signs of deep preoccupation, and something about the princess's demeanor suggested this was more than routine royal worries. "You seem different today," she observed carefully. "Has something happened?" The princess linked arms with her friend as they began walking back toward the palace. For a moment she considered sharing the morning's events, but again found herself reluctant to speak about the encounter. It felt too personal, too uncertain to share even with her closest confidant. "I'm not sure," she answered honestly. "Perhaps nothing, or perhaps everything. Time will tell." As they entered the palace, Princess Alara cast one final glance back at the gardens. Somewhere in her heart, she knew this was not the end of the mystery, but merely the beginning. The stranger had appeared once, and somehow she felt certain their paths would cross again. Until then, she would have to content herself with questions and wait for answers that seemed as elusive as morning mist. The diplomatic reception would require her full attention and her most polished royal demeanor, but beneath the surface, her mind would continue to turn over every detail of the morning's encounter. Who was he? Why had he been there? And most intriguingly of all, why did his presence feel like the first page of a story she was meant to be part of? The answers, she suspected, would come when she was ready to receive them. For now, duty called, and Princess Elara steeled herself to play her role in the endless theater of royal life, all while carrying the secret of her mysterious encounter like a precious jewel hidden close to her heart. 3 days had passed since Princess Elara's encounter in the garden, and the memory of the mysterious stranger continued to occupy her thoughts with an intensity that surprised her. Despite her best efforts to focus on her royal duties, she found herself distracted during state meetings, absent-minded during conversations, and constantly drawn to windows that overlooked the gardens where the encounter had taken place. The diplomatic reception had proceeded without incident, though several foreign dignitaries had commented on the princess's unusual quietness. Queen Isabella had noticed as well, but had chosen to observe rather than question, trusting that her daughter would share whatever was troubling her when she felt ready. On this particular evening, Princess Elara stood in her private chambers, gazing out at the moonlit gardens below. The silver light transformed the familiar landscape into something ethereal and mysterious, much like it had appeared during that fateful morning 3 days earlier. Lady Catherine had retired for the night, leaving the princess alone with her thoughts and the growing conviction that she needed to take action to solve this puzzle. She had spent hours researching the palace's history, looking for any mention of secret passages or hidden entrances that might explain how someone could appear and disappear so easily from the secured gardens. The royal archives contained centuries of documentation, but nothing that shed light on her current mystery. If anything, her research had only confirmed how impossible the stranger's presence should have been. A soft knock at her chamber door interrupted her contemplation. "Come in," she called, expecting to see one of her personal attendants. To her surprise, it was Captain Thornfield who entered, his expression more serious than usual. The veteran guard rarely sought private audiences with members of the royal family unless the matter was of significant importance. "Your Highness, I hope I'm not disturbing you at this late hour. I wanted to speak with you about the incident in the gardens." Princess Elara gestured for him to take a seat near the fireplace, where a low fire provided both warmth and privacy for their conversation. "Of course, Captain. Have you discovered something new?" The captain's weathered features showed the strain of 3 days of intensive investigation. "Not exactly discovered, Your Highness, but I've noticed some irregularities that concern me. May I speak freely?" "Please do. Your candor is always welcome." Captain Thornfield leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering to ensure their privacy. "In my 23 years of service to this family, I've learned to trust certain instincts. The morning you encountered this unknown individual, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. The sense that we were dealing with someone far more capable than an ordinary intruder." Princess Elara's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "Our investigation revealed several troubling facts. First, every gate and entrance to the palace grounds was monitored and secured that morning. No unauthorized person entered through any of our checkpoints. Second, our guard rotations were executed precisely as planned, with no gaps in coverage. Third, the gardens themselves are under constant surveillance from the guard towers." The princess waited, sensing there was more to come. "Yet you saw someone, and I believe you completely." which means we're dealing with an individual who possesses skills or knowledge that allows them to move through our security measures without detection. In my experience, such abilities are not common. Princess Alara considered this information carefully. The captain's words confirmed her own growing suspicion that the stranger was no ordinary person. What do you suggest we do? I've increased security throughout the palace, but I wanted to ask you something important. During your encounter with this person, did you sense any threat or danger? Any indication that their presence was malicious? The question gave the princess pause. She had replayed the encounter countless times in her memory, analyzing every detail, every nuance of the stranger's behavior and demeanor. No, Captain. Quite the opposite, actually. There was something peaceful about his presence, calming even. Captain Thornfield nodded slowly, his experienced eyes studying her face. That matches my own intuition, which is why I haven't declared a full security alert. But I want you to promise me that if you see this person again, you'll immediately call for assistance. Regardless of how harmless they might seem, their very ability to be where they shouldn't be makes them potentially dangerous. Princess Alara agreed, though privately she wondered if she would actually follow through on such a promise. Something about the stranger's appearance had felt like a gift rather than a threat, and she was reluctant to shatter that possibility with heavy-handed security measures. After Captain Thornfield departed, the princess found herself more restless than before. Sleep seemed impossible, and she decided to take advantage of the late hour to do something she hadn't done since childhood: explore the palace after dark. Perhaps a change of perspective would help her think more clearly about recent events. Wrapping a dark cloak around her nightgown, Princess Alara slipped quietly from her chambers and made her way through the palace corridors. The familiar halls took on a different character in the moonlight filtering through tall windows. Shadows pooled in corners, and the usual sounds of daytime activity were replaced by the soft whisper of night breezes through ancient stones. She made her way to the library, hoping that the peaceful environment would help settle her thoughts. The vast room was even more impressive at night, with moonbeams creating geometric patterns across the floor and illuminating the countless volumes that lined the walls from floor to ceiling. As she settled into her favorite reading chair with a book of poetry, Princess Alara became aware of a presence in the room. Not the threatening awareness that might signal danger, but the same strange recognition she had felt in the garden 3 days earlier. She looked up slowly, her heart beating faster with anticipation rather than fear. He was there, standing between 2 tall bookcases near the back of the library. The mysterious stranger appeared exactly as she remembered him. The dark clothing, the intelligent gray-blue eyes, the air of quiet confidence that seemed to surround him like an invisible cloak. This time, however, she had a better opportunity to observe him in detail. He was perhaps a year or 2 older than she had initially thought, with strong but refined features that suggested both strength and sensitivity. His dark hair caught the moonlight, and she noticed that his clothes, while simple, were made from fine materials and expertly tailored. This was not a common vagrant who had somehow breached the palace security, but someone of evident education and refinement. "Good evening, Your Highness," he said softly, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't immediately place. The words were respectful, but not subservient, as if he considered them equals, despite her royal status. Princess Alara set down her book carefully, trying to project calm confidence despite the rapid beating of her heart. "Good evening." I was beginning to wonder if I had imagined our previous meeting. A gentle smile crossed his features. "You have an excellent memory. Most people convince themselves that unexplained encounters were simply dreams or tricks of light. Are you going to tell me who you are? Or shall I continue to think of you as my mysterious visitor?" He moved closer, though he maintained a respectful distance that made it clear he understood the proprieties of the situation. My name is Adrian Blackthorne. As for who I am, that's a more complicated question than you might expect. Princess Alara studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or malice. She found neither, only an openness that seemed genuine and complete. Mr. Blackthorne, then, though I suspect that name doesn't fully answer my question about your identity or your rather remarkable ability to appear in places where you shouldn't be able to go. Adrian's smile widened slightly. Your Highness has a gift for understatement. You're quite right that my presence here raises questions that simple names cannot answer. Then perhaps you could start with an easier question. How did you get into the library tonight? And for that matter, how did you get into the gardens 3 days ago? The palace has many secrets, Your Highness, passages and entrances that were built centuries ago and forgotten by subsequent generations. I have made it my business to learn about such things. Princess Alara leaned forward in her chair, fascinated despite herself. That sounds like the beginning of a story I would very much like to hear. Adrian glanced around the library as if ensuring they were truly alone. It is indeed a story, though perhaps not one that should be told in its entirety during a chance encounter in a moonlit library. Then tell me what parts you can share. I find myself extraordinarily curious about someone who can move through our security measures as if they didn't exist. For a moment, Adrian seemed to weigh his options. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of caution mixed with determination. I am what you might call a researcher, Your Highness. My studies focus on the hidden histories of royal houses, particularly the forgotten passages and secret chambers that were built into palaces during times of political uncertainty. A historian, then? Of sorts, though my methods are more practical than most historians employ. I don't simply read about secret passages in dusty books. I find them, explore them, and document their current conditions. Princess Alara felt a thrill of excitement at this revelation. The palace had always held an air of mystery for her, with its ancient stones and countless rooms, many of which had been sealed or forgotten over the centuries. The possibility that Adrian might know secrets about her own home that even she had never discovered was intensely appealing. And what have you discovered about Valenhall Palace? Adrian's eyes took on an almost scholarly enthusiasm. Your ancestral home is remarkable, Your Highness. The original builders included an entire network of concealed passages, hidden rooms, and emergency exits that were designed to protect the royal family during times of siege or political upheaval. Most of these features have been forgotten, but they remain fully functional. Is that how you've been able to move around undetected? In part, yes, though I should clarify that I have no intention of using this knowledge for any purpose that would harm your family or threaten the kingdom's security. My interests are purely academic. Princess Alara stood and walked to one of the tall windows, gazing out at the moonlit grounds while processing this information. The stranger, Adrian, had answered some of her questions, but had raised many more in the process. His explanation made sense of his mysterious appearances, but it didn't address the larger question of his true purpose or identity. Mr. Blackthorne, she said without turning around, I find myself in an unusual situation. Everything about our encounters suggests that I should be alarmed or at least suspicious of your presence. Yet I feel neither alarm nor suspicion. Instead, I find myself curious about your research and somewhat impressed by your abilities. Your instincts serve you well, Your Highness. I mean no harm to you or your family. She turned back to face him, studying his expression carefully. But there's something more to this, isn't there? Something you haven't told me yet. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him wrestling with some internal decision. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. You're very perceptive. Yes, there is more to my story, though it ventures into territory that might be difficult to believe. Try me. My research into the hidden passages of royal palaces is not purely academic. I am searching for specific information about events that occurred in this palace over 2 centuries ago, events that were deliberately hidden from official records and that may have significant implications for the present day. Princess Alara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. What kind of events? There are records, hidden in private collections and family documents, that suggest a secret was concealed within these walls during the reign of King Edmund III. A secret that certain people have spent generations trying to uncover. The name struck a chord in the princess's memory. King Edmund III had been her ancestor, a ruler known for his wisdom and his successful defense of the kingdom against foreign invasion. The official histories painted him as an exemplary monarch, but like most historical figures, the reality had likely been more complex than the sanitized accounts suggested. And you believe this secret still exists somewhere in the palace? I believe it's possible. The hidden passages and chambers I've discovered were clearly designed for more than simple transportation. Some of them appear to have been built specifically for concealment of objects or documents. Princess Alara's mind raced with possibilities. The idea that her ancestral home might contain hidden treasures or important historical documents was thrilling, but Adrian's serious demeanor suggested that whatever he was seeking had implications beyond mere historical curiosity. Mr. Blackthorne, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I hope you'll give me an honest answer. Are you working alone in this research, or are there others involved? Adrian's hesitation before answering told her as much as his words. There are others who share my interest in these historical mysteries. Not all of them have purely academic motives. The implications of this statement were sobering. If Adrian was part of a larger group seeking something hidden in the palace, then Princess Alara was potentially dealing with something far more serious than a lone researcher's curiosity. I see. And what role do you play in this group? I am what you might call an advanced scout. My job is to locate and document potential sites of interest. I don't participate in any retrieval activities. Princess Alara absorbed this information, trying to evaluate the potential threats and opportunities it represented. Adrian's honesty about his situation suggested that he was trustworthy, but it also meant that others might eventually follow in his footsteps. Others who might not be as respectful of her family's privacy or safety. Mr. Blackthorne, I'm going to make you a proposal. I would like to learn more about these hidden passages and chambers you've discovered. In exchange, I will provide you with access to our family's private archives, which might contain information relevant to your research. Adrian looked surprised by her offer. Your Highness, that's very generous, but I'm not sure it would be wise for you to become involved in this situation. I'm afraid I'm already involved. Whether I choose to be or not, these are my family's ancestral halls, and if there are secrets hidden here, I have both a right and a responsibility to know about them. Furthermore, I suspect that working together would be more beneficial than working at cross purposes. The logic of her argument seemed to convince him, though she could see he remained concerned about the potential consequences of involving her in his activities. There would be risks, Your Highness. If my colleagues learn that you're aware of our research, they might view you as either an asset to be protected or an obstacle to be removed. Princess Alara felt a thrill of fear mixed with excitement. The sheltered world of her royal upbringing had never prepared her for such possibilities. But she found herself strangely drawn to the challenge, rather than repelled by it. Then we'll have to be very careful about how we proceed, won't we? Adrian studied her face for a long moment, and she could see him reassessing his initial impressions of her character and capabilities. You're quite different from what I expected when I began this research, Your Highness. In what way? I anticipated that involving a member of the royal family would complicate matters unnecessarily. I didn't expect to find someone who might actually be an ally in uncovering the truth. Princess Alara extended her hand in a gesture of partnership. Then let's work together, Mr. Blackthorne. You can show me the hidden passages you've discovered, and I'll help you search our archives for references to King Edmund's secret. Adrian shook her hand solemnly, and she felt a spark of electricity at the contact that had nothing to do with the mysterious circumstances of their meeting. Very well, Your Highness, but we must proceed with extreme caution. The forces interested in this secret have waited over 2 centuries to find it. They won't appreciate interference from anyone, regardless of their royal status. As they finalized the details of their collaboration, Princess Alara realized that her life had just taken a dramatic turn toward adventure and uncertainty. The sheltered existence she had always known was about to give way to something far more complex and potentially dangerous. Yet rather than feeling frightened, she felt more alive and engaged than she had in years. The mysterious stranger in her garden had indeed been the beginning of something significant, a partnership that would test her courage, challenge her assumptions, and potentially change the course of her life forever. As Adrian melted back into the shadows of the library, leaving her alone with her thoughts and plans, Princess Alara knew that tomorrow would mark the beginning of the greatest adventure of her life. The next evening arrived with an atmosphere of anticipation that Princess Alara had never experienced before. Throughout the day, she had struggled to maintain her composure during routine royal obligations, knowing that nightfall would bring the beginning of her adventure with Adrian Blackthorne. She had spent hours in the family archives, searching for any reference to King Edmund III that might provide clues to the secret Adrian sought. Her research had yielded several interesting discoveries. King Edmund had indeed commissioned extensive renovations to the palace during his reign, officially to strengthen its defenses against foreign invasion. However, the costs recorded for these renovations far exceeded what would have been necessary for simple fortification improvements. Additionally, she had found references to a mysterious advisor named Master Aldrich, who appeared in court records for only 3 years before vanishing completely from all documentation. As the palace settled into its nighttime routines, Princess Alara made her way to the agreed meeting point, a small alcove near the eastern wing that Adrian had specified. She wore dark clothing and soft-soled shoes, feeling like a character from one of the adventure novels she had enjoyed in her youth. Adrian emerged from the shadows precisely at midnight, carrying a small lantern and what appeared to be architectural drawings. His expression was serious but encouraging as he greeted her. "Good evening, Your Highness. Are you certain you want to proceed with this exploration? Once we begin, we'll be committed to seeing it through to its conclusion." Princess Alara straightened her shoulders with determination. "I've never been more certain of anything, Mr. Blackthorne. Did you bring the maps you mentioned?" Adrian unrolled the drawings he carried, revealing detailed floor plans of the palace that included passages and chambers not shown in any official architectural records. The intricate diagrams showed a network of hidden corridors that connected virtually every major room in the palace, along with several concealed chambers that had no apparent connection to the main structure. "These are remarkable," Princess Alara whispered, studying the complex network with fascination. "How did you create such detailed maps?" Careful exploration over several months, combined with research into the original construction documents. Your palace is essentially 2 buildings, the one everyone sees, and the hidden one that exists within its walls. Adrian led her to what appeared to be a solid stone wall near the eastern staircase. Running his hands along the carved molding, he pressed a specific sequence of decorative elements. To Princess Alara's amazement, a section of the wall swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "The builders were extraordinary craftsmen," Adrian explained as they entered the passage. These mechanisms have remained functional for over 200 years with minimal maintenance. The passage was well constructed, but clearly designed for stealth rather than comfort. The walls were smooth stone, and the floor was covered with thick carpet that muffled their footsteps. Adrian's lantern cast dancing shadows as they moved deeper into the palace's hidden heart. "Where are we going?" Princess Alara asked softly. "To the chamber I believe was King Edmund's private study, a room that doesn't appear in any official palace records. If he hid something important, it would likely be there." They walked for several minutes through twisting passages that seemed to follow the outer walls of the palace. Princess Ilara tried to maintain her bearings, but the hidden routes bore no resemblance to the familiar corridors she had known all her life. Finally, Adrian stopped before another concealed door. "This should open into the chamber," he said, manipulating another hidden mechanism. "Are you ready to discover what your ancestor wanted to keep secret?" The door opened to reveal a room that took Princess Ilara's breath away. Unlike the rest of the palace, which had been modernized and redecorated over the centuries, this chamber appeared untouched since King Edmund's time. Rich tapestries covered the walls, displaying the royal coat of arms as it had appeared 2 centuries earlier. A massive oak desk dominated the center of the room, its surface covered with documents that seemed to have been left there only yesterday. But it was the walls that truly captured their attention. Every available surface was covered with maps, charts, and diagrams that depicted not just the kingdom of Valenhall, but neighboring territories, trade routes, and what appeared to be detailed intelligence about foreign military capabilities. "This wasn't just a study," Princess Ilara breathed, moving to examine the documents more closely. "It was a strategic command center." Adrian was already studying one of the larger maps, his expression growing more troubled as he took in its details. "Your Highness, I think we've found something much more significant than either of us anticipated." The map he indicated showed the kingdom of Valenhall, but with borders that extended far beyond the current territorial boundaries. Notes in King Edmund's handwriting detailed planned expansions, alliance negotiations, and what appeared to be a comprehensive strategy for unifying several neighboring kingdoms under Valenhall's rule. Princess Ilara felt a chill as the implications became clear. He was planning conquests, not just defending the kingdom, but expanding it through systematic conquest. "It appears so. But look at this," Adrian said, pointing to a series of documents on the desk. "These suggest that he succeeded in the first phase of his plan." The papers detailed secret treaties with neighboring rulers, agreements that had apparently never been made public or recorded in official diplomatic archives. According to these documents, King Edmund had negotiated the peaceful annexation of 3 smaller kingdoms, doubling Valenhall's territory and resources without a single battle. "But our current borders don't reflect these acquisitions," Princess Ilara said, puzzled. "If he succeeded in these negotiations, what happened to the additional territories?" Adrian was examining another set of documents, his expression growing more grave by the moment. "I think I'm beginning to understand. Look at these dates." The princess joined him at the desk, where he had arranged several papers in chronological order. The secret treaties were all dated within a 2-year period, followed by a series of increasingly desperate communications from King Edmund's mysterious advisor, Master Aldrich. "Master Aldrich," she murmured, remembering her research. "He disappeared from all records during King Edmund's reign." "Because he was murdered," Adrian said quietly, indicating a document that appeared to be a confession written in King Edmund's own hand, "by foreign agents who discovered the secret expansion plan." The confession revealed a tragic tale of ambition, betrayal, and loss. King Edmund's peaceful conquest strategy had been discovered by a coalition of threatened neighboring powers who had assassinated Master Aldrich and threatened the king's family unless he abandoned his territorial claims and returned to Valenhall's original borders. So he gave it all up to protect his family, Princess Elara said, understanding the full scope of her ancestors' sacrifice. And he hid all evidence of his achievements to ensure they could never be used against the kingdom in the future. That's where our story becomes complicated, Adrian said, his voice carrying a note of warning. Because the people I work with believe these documents prove that Valenhall has legitimate claims to territories currently held by other nations. Princess Elara felt her heart sink as she realized the true implications of their discovery. They want to use King Edmund's secret to justify modern territorial claims. Exactly. And they're not interested in peaceful negotiations. The sound of footsteps in the passage outside interrupted their conversation. Adrian immediately extinguished his lantern, plunging them into complete darkness. He moved close to Princess Elara, his voice barely audible as he whispered in her ear. "My colleagues have found us. I'm sorry, Your Highness. I had hoped we would have more time to decide how to handle this information." The chamber door opened, admitting 3 figures carrying torches. Princess Elara recognized none of them, but their bearing and equipment suggested they were professional operatives rather than casual treasure hunters. "Mr. Blackthorne," said the leader, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and penetrating eyes. "You've exceeded your instructions. This operation was supposed to remain covert until we had secured the documents." Adrian stepped forward, positioning himself between Princess Elara and the newcomers. "The situation has become more complex than we anticipated, Director Hartwell. Her Highness has proven to be an ally rather than an obstacle." Director Hartwell's gaze shifted to Princess Elara, evaluating her with the cold efficiency of someone accustomed to making quick decisions about people's fates. "Your Highness, I'm afraid you've become involved in matters of national security that extend far beyond your kingdom's borders." Princess Elara found her voice, drawing upon years of royal training to project authority despite her fear. "These are my family's ancestral chambers, and these documents relate to my kingdom's history. I believe I have a right to be involved in any decisions about their future." "You would think so," Director Hartwell replied, with a smile that contained no warmth. "Unfortunately, the organization I represent has invested considerable resources in locating these materials. We cannot allow personal sentiment or royal privilege to interfere with strategic objectives." Adrian's posture tensed, and Princess Elara realized that the situation was about to become dangerous. Her mind raced through possible courses of action, settling on the one approach that might give them some advantage. "Director Hartwell," she said with as much authority as she could muster, "before you make any irreversible decisions, perhaps you should know that these documents are not the complete archive." The director's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "King Edmund was extremely thorough in his record-keeping. What you see here represents only his strategic planning. The actual treaties, correspondence with foreign rulers, and documentation of territorial transfers are stored in a separate location. This was a complete fabrication, but Princess Elara delivered it with the confidence of someone who had been trained from childhood to speak with unquestionable authority. Adrian shot her a quick look of surprise, but remained silent. "And where might this additional archive be located?" Director Hartwell asked, though her tone suggested skepticism. "In a location that can only be accessed by someone of royal blood, using methods known only to members of my family. If you want the complete documentation of King Edmund's achievements, you'll need my cooperation." For several tense moments, the director studied Princess Elara's face, searching for signs of deception. Finally, she spoke to her companions without taking her eyes off the princess. "Secure the chamber and these documents. We'll continue this conversation in a more controlled environment." As the operatives began gathering papers from the desk, Adrian leaned close to Princess Elara and whispered urgently, "Whatever you're planning, I hope you have an exit strategy." "Trust me," she whispered back. though privately she admitted her plan was far from complete. They were escorted through the hidden passages to a part of the palace Princess Ilara had never seen before, a section that appeared to have been converted into a temporary command center. Maps of the region covered the walls, and sophisticated communication equipment hummed quietly in the corners. Director Hartwell gestured for them to sit at a conference table while she reviewed the documents they had recovered. Your Highness, assuming you're telling the truth about additional archives, what would you require in exchange for providing access to them? Princess Ilara took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine not just her own fate, but potentially the future of several kingdoms. I want to know exactly what your organization plans to do with this historical information. That's not a negotiation you're in a position to conduct. On the contrary, Director Hartwell, I think my position is stronger than you realize. These documents detail secret agreements between sovereign nations that were never officially revoked. Any attempt to use them as the basis for territorial claims would require extensive historical validation, which would be virtually impossible without cooperation from the Royal Archives of Valenhall. The director's expression suggested grudging respect for Princess Ilara's reasoning. You're more astute than I expected. Very well, I'll share our objectives. My organization represents a coalition of interests that believe the current borders in this region are artificial constructs imposed by external powers. We intend to use King Edmund's documentation to support the restoration of more natural territorial arrangements. Through negotiation or force. Through whatever means prove necessary. Princess Ilara felt a surge of determination. The vision Director Hartwell described would inevitably lead to war and suffering, justified by the manipulation of her ancestors' legacy. She could not allow that to happen. In that case, I'm afraid I cannot provide the cooperation you're seeking. Director Hartwell's patience was clearly wearing thin. Your Highness, I don't think you appreciate the seriousness of your situation. We have what we need to move forward with our plans. Your cooperation would be helpful, but it's not essential. Actually, it is, Princess Ilara said, standing with all the dignity her royal training could provide. Because the documents you've found are incomplete, and any historian or international court will immediately recognize their limitations. More importantly, you've violated the sovereignty of my kingdom and committed acts of espionage against a peaceful nation. She moved to a communication device on the nearby table, hoping it was connected to palace security. Captain Thornfield, this is Princess Ilara. I need immediate assistance in the Eastern Wing. We have a security situation involving foreign operatives. Director Hartwell's hand moved toward a weapon, but Adrian stepped forward. Director, I suggest you reconsider your position. Princess Ilara has offered you far more than you had any right to expect. Perhaps it's time to accept that some secrets are meant to remain hidden. The sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside indicated that Captain Thornfield had received the princess's message. Director Hartwell's operatives looked to her for instructions, their hands also moving toward concealed weapons. Stand down, the director ordered, recognizing that the situation had shifted beyond her control. We're leaving, but understand, Your Highness, this matter is far from resolved. As the operatives gathered their equipment and prepared to depart through the hidden passages, Director Hartwell turned back to Princess Ilara. You've protected your kingdom today, but you've also made yourself and your family targets. We know where to find you, and we will return when the circumstances are more favorable. After they had gone, Captain Thornfield arrived with a full security detail. Princess Ilara provided him with a carefully edited version of events, explaining that they had discovered foreign agents attempting to steal historical documents. She made no mention of Adrian's role or the true nature of the secret they had uncovered. Later, in the quiet hours before dawn, Princess Ilara and Adrian met once more in King Edmund's hidden chamber. They had decided to destroy the documents, ensuring that her ancestors' secret expansion plans could never be used to justify modern conflicts. "Are you certain about this?" Adrian asked, holding a torch near the papers spread across the ancient desk. "I am. King Edmund chose to sacrifice his achievements to protect his people. I can do no less." As the flames consumed the last evidence of the secret that had remained hidden for over 2 centuries, Princess Ilara felt a profound sense of completion. Her mysterious encounter in the garden had led her on an adventure that tested her courage and forced her to make decisions that would affect generations. "What will you do now, Mr. Blackthorne?" Adrian smiled, the firelight reflecting in his gray-blue eyes. "I think it's time I found a new profession. One that doesn't involve violating royal privacy or consorting with organizations that threaten peaceful kingdoms." "I might know of a position that would suit your talents," Princess Ilara said thoughtfully. "Our kingdom could use someone with your expertise in historical research and palace security. Of course, the work would be entirely legitimate and properly authorized." "Are you offering me employment, Your Highness?" "I'm offering you a chance to use your remarkable abilities in service of something worthwhile, and perhaps," she added with a smile that had nothing to do with royal protocol, "an opportunity to continue our conversations under more normal circumstances." As the last of the documents turned to ash, Princess Ilara realized that while one mystery had been solved, another was just beginning. The mysterious stranger who had appeared in her garden had indeed changed everything, though not in ways she could have imagined. The adventure was over, but the partnership, and perhaps something more meaningful, was just beginning. The secret that had shaped her kingdom's hidden history would remain buried, but the future it had helped create was bright with new possibilities. Sometimes, Princess Ilara reflected, the greatest treasures are not the ones we discover, but the ones we choose to protect.